and thank you everyone for joining us. I know that we had all hoped to be able to be in person in San Francisco, having a conversation in a room, sitting around tables. We're all becoming adjusted, I think, at least a little bit to doing this virtually. I want to thank everybody for for joining us. It's exciting to see so many people who want to be part of this conversation. As Walter noted, IES has been funding the Virtual Learning Lab for, gosh, 4 years now, right? A while. And we really are excited about the work that the VLL has been doing. And their work has really been focused on trying to understand how to optimize online education in the context of Algebra Nation. Clearly, as the years have progressed and in this new world that we're living in, there are new questions that are arising about how technology can be used not only to support instruction, but also to support our understanding of how learning happens and research. And so one of the things that's going to happen today is you're going to hear from, have the opportunity to hear from several different types of providers of online education. They're going to range from individuals who are who have developed tools designed primarily to deliver instruction, and other folks who are really trying to develop systems that sit behind the scenes and try to manage the processes that we undergo as instructors, right? Content management systems. And so one of the things that we're thinking about at IES right now, for those of you who've heard my boss, Mark Schneider, talk, is really trying to think about how do you design online learning environments, not only to support learning, but to support knowledge, right? Learning from the research side of this, right? How to help us learn how better to deliver instruction and learn about how we learn, right? So we're starting to think about what role platforms play in all of this. And I have a series of questions that I'm gonna pose, and I hope that we will talk about over the course of the next 2 hours. And I wanna also say, I know my email's not up here, but I welcome any email communication, any conversations, questions that you guys have, either as researchers or practitioners, because I do wanna put you in touch with all of the work of IES. So before I jump specifically into the questions, let me just do a little overview. Walter asked if I had a slide, and I didn't send him my org chart because I feel like in many ways as a federal employee going out to talk without an org chart is like a bad thing, but we're all at home. So I'm gonna use my hands. I can see my hands and we'll talk through it. As Walter noted, IES is the independent research arm of the Department of Education. So we are, in some ways, I like to say we try to function both like the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. And structurally, we're more like NIH. So we sit under Ed, but we are independent and we are able to make decisions and award grants without political oversight. So that's, I think, an important piece for everyone to know. IES has 4 centers. So there are 2 research centers, the center that I oversee, as well as the Center for the National Center for Special Education Research. Those 2 centers are the primary places where you come if you want discretionary research dollars. So I know that there are lots of researchers on the line. So one of the questions you all may have for me is how can I get money to support all of this cool, exciting research that we're talking about? The website that you all should write down right now is ies.ed.gov/funding. And that will take you to our current funding opportunities, and it's where all of our funding will come out. We have 2 other centers I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of. One is the National Center for Education Evaluation, which is responsible for things like the What Works Clearinghouse. It's responsible for ERIC. For those of you in education research, you might be familiar with that library, that online library, as well as carrying out evaluations of department investments. And then finally, with the center that I'm assuming that almost everyone knows is the National Center for Education Statistics. That's responsible for collecting much data, both nationally and internationally, to help us understand how education proceeds. So that's my framework. That's where I sit. I have been really blessed and privileged to be able to work in this community and to support NCER and to be at IES since the beginning and watch as it's transformed over time. But as we're moving into our conversation today, let me just throw out a couple of questions that I'd like for you all to think about and talk about over the next 2 hours. So one of the first, I think, fundamental questions is to think about which digital learning platforms exist that already have a large enough user base to support large-scale research studies. And when I first thought about that, that question, of course, was before COVID hit and everybody's online. So that question may actually already be answered. And we know that there are tons and tons of different, tons and tons of users now engaged in online learning. Another question that I struggle about as I try to think about how do we do research and how do we use these online learning environments is to what degree are there content areas or grade levels that don't mesh well with online learning, right? As we're trying to think about leveraging platforms for research, what are the restrictions? What are the constraints? The other thing that I hope we'll think about is what are the key features of a platform that we need? What do you need to have to support rigorous tests and to do replication of research findings? So what are the things that a platform needs to be able to turn on and turn off? What can you do quickly? What can you do easily? What requires lots and lots of hard work? And how can we think about that in order to speed up the degree to which we're getting answers to really critical questions and not overlook key findings, particularly for learning that takes more than, say, a week, right? That we have accumulations of knowledge. I think we also want to hear from the companies, right? So what are the barriers and challenges for companies who are created to deliver services and not delivered to create research, to do research? I think for me, one of the real issues has to do with privacy and access to data. And how do you get access to data as a company? Like if you want to share that with a researcher, what are all of the various things we need to think about to make sure that we're not running into problems around privacy? What are the research questions, right? So that's another thing I'm sure we'll hear about. What questions can we ask in an online environment and use platforms to help us answer? And finally, what is the larger infrastructure to make sure that the platform developers, the research community, the education stakeholders, all are working together to try to solve these critical problems in education practice that we care about in learning? That, I think, one of the wonderful things about this session is that this is one of the first times I think that many of us have been able to come together in a public forum to have this kind of conversation. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about these conversations as we move forward. So I think that's enough from me. I'll share out my email again at the end because you'll hear from me right now, but I want to turn this over to the stars of the show, to the platforms who are going to share what they're thinking about in learning, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you guys are as well.